Hey there, rulers. DMO73 here, bringing you our last feature match before the World Championships. Today, I am playing Tron Treasuries with the new Void Trio. I'm playing against Robert Strong, sitting down with his first take on the Big Old Orb Reunion. Let's go ahead and jump right in.
This session brought to you by Odyssey Games for pre-orders and sealed product, CCG Prime for tons of singles and supplies, Cardo Doko for international rulers looking for product, and fowtlibrary.com for articles and wonderful deck lists,
as well as our guest lecturer members King Pearlshine, Vite Ramen, Mognite, and Darren Noblock.
Class is in session.
So as we get started here, just a reminder that Odyssey Games does have pre-orders for Clash of the Star Trees available right now, both boxes and pre-release kits. You can check it out on the website. You can also go in the link in the description to get signed up for our July Discord event with the Crimson Moon Battleground format of Wanderer to get one of these awesome Little Maria playmats if you top 8. So hope to see you there. It's a nice little fundraiser for FowFest. So jumping right in here, we have Tron Treasuries versus Reunion Utility. When I say Tron, if you don't know what I mean, I'm talking about the stones from Ghost in the Shell, that if you have the 3 unique stones, they suddenly produce a ton of Void Will, and we can make use of that in a really cool way, especially when you consider adding on the Grail, which lets us each only recover 1 stone per turn. You combine that with the fact that our stones produce multiple Will, and it suddenly doesn't hurt us as much where it does attacks our opponent. And then, of course, Robert just playing a Reunion build. Pretty straightforward take on the idea of Reunion, just to kind of grab utility out of the crew deck and see what you hit, see if it's relevant to what it's times, if it's better than what's in your hand. So going in here, Robert is going to be on the play. Goes ahead and says, let's see what our first Reunion hit is. Maybe we hit a 1-drop. We'll see what it is. We do see a Brad, so that is not going to get cast right now. That is fine, though. He can continue into the rest of his turn. This is kind of how you're probably going to see Reunion used most of the time. It's just like first thing for the turn is to then just use Reunion and see if it determines the rest of your turn. Do see a Kaguya enters the Game of Gods come down here to generate a Moon token and then draw a card. This makes sense. There is a lot of Moon implicated stuff with Reunion, so Kaguya enters the Game of Gods as a way to help that happen while also generating gaining card neutral because you draw a card. We're gonna go ahead and use coin for Stone Bowl of Gears. This is just to protect our other ones, mainly because we want to leave the stone up here, trying to see if this resolves. And then we're going to go ahead and pass. This is because we have that attack order in hand. You see we're clearly setting up to be able to try to go into a turn 1.5 attack order to have 1 Gears in our possession. So going from there, Robert choosing to sit that card to the bottom. Are we going to see another potential Reunion trigger here? Or are we going to see something come out of the hand? In comes Cyclone, the new hero of Eternal. Going to try to just cycle a card again here. Sets up for Cyclone emerges if he's playing that. And then down comes the Interdimensional Library, or Great Dimension Library. This will give some extra flexibility here of just being able to do some card draw. We're going to go ahead and, as he passes turn, use Attack Order, targeting the Cyclone here, to try to destroy it and be able to contract into Genocider to be able to start getting in aggressively, especially if we can get other contracts or inner treasuries into play, which is kind of the point. So we can rush down for a good amount of damage. Right now, Genocider just swinging in for 600 because you only have 1 treasury. Call for Stone hitting the second of the 2 unique stones for the Tron combination, swinging in for 6. No resonators to force him to banish, so that's just going to be a free swing. And with no will to be able to interact with. Robert's going to go ahead and draw and then do some cycling off of the Great Dimension Library. Seeing 2 cards per turn is pretty good. So what I've heard, especially because Reunion Library will also then kind of make those cards potentially able to be recast later by its banish effect. Discarding another Cyclone, going to the RFG. Doesn't want that in hand right now. The question here is, what spot removal for a J ruler does Robert have in the toolbox, either in the crew deck or in main deck, because any kind of small resonator stuff, or there is the reunion stuff that does a lot of damage prevention, isn't going to be super helpful when Genocider forces at least one banish per, and also flies. All of the void contracts fly, which is pretty great. Seeing what we potentially hit off the crew deck, it is a Garion. Unfortunately, nothing really helps us there. Can't cast it. Choosing to, looks like maybe play a Guardian of Eternal, which will be able to prevent that first damage. The problem is, though, again, it doesn't fly, so Genocider is going to force him to banish it, and will also just fly over him. Draw for turn, and then before recovery, we're going to go ahead and use this Sex Return from Retirement, just to search for whatever we want. This is probably going to get us some form of Treasury item to keep going, or it could get us Tsukihime, which will then get us a Treasury item. We're trying to build towards 6 unique Treasuries. It's not that hard to do. Ultimately grabbing the Jeweled Branch of Gears, which means we probably already have Tsukihime in hand, and we'll be going from that route. Calling Stone, and we did get all 3 unique stones. So suddenly between those 3 stones, 2 of them now produce 2 void, and 1 of them produces 3 void. We can use Jeweled Branch plus the 1 floating left over from that stone to then place Tsukihime. So we got 2 cards out for 1 stone, which is kind of crazy. Tsukihime gets us then to search for whatever gears we want. If we can get to 3 treasuries, then suddenly Queen is live. You see we are starting with Eve and Kane. We're not using Abel. Abel's in the sideboard for if we get that 3-drop mastery spell to be able to bring the 3rd one into play. Leaving 1 floating here. We're going to go ahead and play Cowrie of Gears to draw another card. Then as we attempt to move into combat, see, and observing the Crimson Moon is going to generate a token and then shoot something for 500 damage per token, which Genocider's 1,000, and he'll have 2 tokens, so is able to try to stop it. We are going to respond with the other floating from the stone to try to use Defense Order just to protect it, but Robert does follow up with the Fairer spell to stop it. So we are going to lose our Genocider this turn, which is a little unfortunate. It would have been really good to just get to swinging for 1,000, get that Guardian off the board. But still, at the same time, we've got Floating Will available here, or we've got 3 void worth of will for during his turn. We've got a Tsukihime up, we've got 3 treasuries. We're already kind of rebuilding our establishment, our position here. Being able to go into a capture order to go into Queen during his turn is pretty solid. That's like a follow-up play here based on what he goes into, but we'll have to see exactly how it goes. Does a little bit more digging with Great Dimension Library, a card that is seeing a lot of play right now, but honestly is a lot of fun to make use of. Discards the Barrier. Barrier's not going to do too much help here. The problem is now that the Tron stones are up, the headquarters and everything else are up for me on the right, is that suddenly a card that is just suddenly pretty much lethal is Moondust Revolution. This is a card that kind of is the reason why we're playing this deck, to be able to produce so much will, as well as, you know, with the card to be able to, the Grail, to be able to get ahead of our opponent's will-wise. The one disadvantage is the fact that it's very pretty telegraphed that the only cards we're playing in the deck are void. Because those stones are not gears, we're probably pretty much not going to be playing the Scythe, which means we don't really have much cancel interaction. Exploration Mission of the Crimson Moon coming down just to bounce everything from both sides of the field back to the hand. There we go. That is concerning. I just spent a bunch of time trying to rebuild it. Now, don't get me wrong, I'll be able to recast it pretty quick because I'll have so much will, but would like to see if we can respond by using a recapture order to try to remove all of the abilities from his library for the turn, and then be able to do contract. The idea being here is that we want to flip over into queen so that when he does bounce everything back to the hand, I'll still be sitting on queen and be able to get aggressive that way. Does a Great Dimension Library to try to draw a card. Seeing what we can draw into here. The other thing that's important to note here of the library is that he did cast a Fairer spell earlier when he had access to a library, when the library removed it, so we can banish the Great Dimension Library to be able to recast that Fairer spell for 1 void less, but you still only have to pay 1 green because you can't discount the green cost. But you can use the Fairer spell here to cancel the recapture order, so successfully canceling that, putting all those cards back in my hand, does kind of reset the field, which isn't super great when he knows that I have so much will available, but it does at least, especially since not a lot of the Tron stuff is going to have swiftness, gives him some time to be able to put things back, reset up. We're getting to 5 stones, so suddenly some of the bigger things out of the crew deck are relevant. Anything that can be done to kind of make the huge amount of will not really do anything is pretty good. Producing 3 will here. We do Jeweled Branch plus 1 of the floating, so one floating left. We get access to the Tsukihime again. Tsukihime lets us get another treasury item. We're probably going to use the other void to cast a Cowrie, so then, we got 3 cards, 4 will worth of 3 cards off of just 1 stone, which is kind of nuts. I'm going to go ahead and search out that Grail. Now feels like a good time to drop the Grail, especially since Robert's completely tapped out and we don't want to have to worry about getting our stuff bounced again. So we'll use that 1 floating to draw Cowrie, replenish the hand. And then we just have to use 1 stone to be able to cast the Grail. At that point in time, we'll be able to have a pretty decent amount of will to be able to interact with anything that Robert's going to do, especially if his maximum stone count for the turn is 2. 1 from recovery and then 1 from calling stone. Our Gears Grail comes down. We know there is Stone Bowl available. The reason why we're not playing the Stone Bowl right now is because there's not really, it would be a waste of kind of the extra floating. At least that's my initial thought. Maybe we still commit to it just to be able to protect the board though. No, we are going to go ahead and commit to the Stone Bowl of Gears and just probably let the 1 floating just vanish, knowing full well that we'll be able to go into, at the very least, 7 will on our next turn, 8 will if we consider the Jeweled Branch, because we'll be able to recover the 3 will. The minimum we'll be able to have there is 7 off of just the stones, and we could have 7 or 8 plus the 1 from the Jeweled Gears, so we'll have 9. So we're either looking at 8 or 9 will on Robert's turn when he gets 2, or on our next turn when Robert gets only 2. So this feels pretty good for us. Seeing what we might hit off the Reunion deck, we'd love for him to hit a 2-drop here and just kind of tap himself out. That would be great for us. Would pretty much give us the way to be able to have a lethal line. Hitting the 5. Looks like a Terminator drone. Terminator drone is going to go ahead and get cast here. And then at that point, choosing to pass the turn, we're going to use our last 2 wills, since Robert has committed something to board, to go ahead and use recapture order, removing all of the abilities from the Terminator drone, and then we're going to flip into Queen and steal it. And the reason why is because we're very clearly going for lethal next turn by having 6 treasuries with unique names. So Queen's going to enter, steal the Terminator drone, make it into a treasury. That makes us 5. And then in response to the beginning of the turn trigger from Tsukihime, we can tap her to make something else a treasury, at which point in time we will have 6 unique treasuries by the resolution of her trigger. So then all of them will become 10/10 resonators. Then all of our resonators will gain +10/+10, and we'll be swinging in for 7,000 damage. And that would be the lethal there. So unless there's an ability cancel here like a Killua or a Lorite, this is just going to be the game. And even if it wasn't, he would just be then recovering and again have a huge amount of will to be able to push through here. So it seems rather doubtful that there's a response. Just waiting to see if there's anything from Robert before we move in. Does decide to scoop it up, and we're going to go ahead and move into game 2. As we go into game 2 here, you can already see a little bit about what the Void kind of deck is trying to do here. It's trying to mass a huge amount of treasuries, stick a Tsukihime, and then just swing in for lethal, and then steal our opponent's stuff or make our opponent's stuff treasuries to kind of help in that line. We also have the ability with Moondust Revolution to just make a ton of will and just be able to overwhelm our opponent, which is sure will advantage. And that's kind of part 2 of what this deck looks like. So going in, we're going to be having Tron be on the play this time around, and it's a question of well, having that extra will give Robert a chance to make use of the crew deck a little bit better. We'll see how it goes. First time we see a pass from the Treasury deck. We see a 4C from Robert. Obviously did not like what he saw there. Who does look like he has Chef of Reunion, so this may be a little bit more of a reunion tribal kind of deck with like the crew of the reunion and stuff taking center stage. Down comes that Guardian that we saw from the first one. Great card, especially in the early game. Not so great against a deck that has a bunch of flyers though. We do go ahead and see Sex's Return from Retirement. Pretty much the entire deck is 2 cost or less void, so Sex's Return from Retirement is just whatever card we want out of the deck. Jeweled Branch is also really nice here because additions don't have summoning sickness, so you can like play Jeweled Branch and then use Jeweled Branch to play Collector Gears, which is really nice. It sets you up for being able to have a lot of will going into your follow-up turn, which is just overall really, really good. So we're probably going to see that come down, either followed by a Collector Gears or utilizing it plus the other stone here to set up for a Tsukihime, which is a little bit risky, but we're not really worried about a big bounce coming down here. So Tsukihime doesn't feel too bad to just kind of jam, as well as being able to grab just another treasury item. Now, normally this would be honestly a little bit better if we could stick the Agents of Tsukihime. Like if you do Agents of Tsukihime into Tsukihime, and then she suddenly makes your treasuries cost 1 less. So then like you search for a 1-drop treasury, and then you just like get to put it into play for free. There's just a lot of value that can be generated off of it. Down comes a Lasting Spirits for Robert, which is going to go ahead and rest the Tsukihime, prevents it from recovering, and then it will be able to copy all of the abilities on a stat line that's 2 5s, nothing to shake a stick at. For a 1-drop, it's certainly not being aggressive, but it does kind of keep that Tsukihime, my own real threat, out of the board right now. It does see off the crew deck a Rumsfeld. Unfortunately, that's not going to be able to come into play purely because we just don't have the will to cast it. So it does look like we might see something else here. We come down for another Guardian of Eternal. Don't get to recover the Tsukihime here, which is a little unfortunate. Do not hit the 3 unique stones here off the top, so we're going to go ahead and do what I said before, using Jeweled Branch to make Collector Gears, playing Cowrie, so now suddenly we're live for Defense Order, although we have to get the 3rd ruler into play to be able to do that. But still, we're starting to get to a point where we're probably going to hit Tron pretty soon, and we just have an excess of will above Robert, and with Robert being tapped out, there's a real chance that we're gonna go ahead and just slam Grail. Yeah, there it is. Just to say, like, before you can generate any more advantage, I'm already a little bit ahead. My stones are pretty soon gonna start generating more will, and even beyond that, I've got ramp, mana dorks in the field. So I feel comfortable with the idea of, kind of tapping down stuff here. That being said, Robert is still going to be a 3 will because he's going to have energize, so we can still do the bounce everything back to hand, but that doesn't feel super great, especially since, again, there's a very high likelihood that we'll just go into the Tron stones next turn and be able to recast this all even more will efficiently, at which point in time our gears would be really, really backbreaking. Seeing what we get out of the reunion deck here. Looks like a Valentina, the 3-drop to steal everything. It would tap him out, and it would get him the Tsukihime and the Collector Gears, but that doesn't get you a ton of value here, especially since the Tsukihime is going to have to stay tapped as long as that Spirits is in the field, so it might not be worth tapping out. Probably not much in Robert's deck that makes use of Void, and it wouldn't even take the additions, so at that point in time he's still locked down. That being said, there is some potential thought about, with me only recovering 1 stone per turn, and if I don't hit the Tron stone, I'll be down, I'll also be at 3 will, and that gives Robert some time to set up. Arcgrail's Gear Grail here is a very, very a big consideration in terms of what Robert's going to be able to try to do here. So seeing what's in play, we're going to go ahead and just pass the turn, looks like. Trying to use the Tsukihime ability to tap and make the gears, the Tsukihime ability that's on the Spirit to make our Collector Gears be tapped and everything else, but the Collector Gears has barrier, so you can't target it, so we're pretty safe there. Drawing for turn, and then before recovery, we're going to go ahead and try to use a Moondust Revolution to shoot the Spirit for 800 damage, because we can rest 2 treasury items. Let's try to do 800. We're going to see a Reunion's Head Chef get quick casted in here in response, so the damage will be prevented. We'll still get to gain the 8. We don't get to draw up to, we have more than 2 cards in hand, so that's fine. Still don't see Tron stones, but as soon as we do, man, are we going to be producing just an absolute crap ton of will for this hand. We're going to go ahead and tap out here to play a recapture order to try to go ahead and just contract and steal his Head Chef. He's going to let it resolve, so Queen's going to come in and try to steal Head Chef. Oh no, Queen's going to go ahead and try to steal the Spirit, saying, look, you took my Tsukihime, so I'll take the thing copying my Tsukihime, and I'll have Tsukihime back. You stopped me from removing it, so I'll just do this instead. And this once again sets me up to be very close to having enough treasury items. 1 more, and we're suddenly at that same spot we were before, where we're going to put him in a spot of just getting destroyed by these, 2,000 strength treasury items, especially the fact that Queen, it will be a 1919 in the air, is something kind of huge as well. Do you see that Valentina hit again? Definitely more of a consideration now. The problem is, though, that Queen is still on field, and so the Queen won't get removed, and so we're going to get to start swinging in there. Might see the first ever instance of something being stolen back without being, given back. Valentina to steal the Spirits, which was already being stolen by Queen. So then if Valentina dies, the Spirit goes back to me, and then if the Queen dies, it goes back to him. Pretty neat little back and forth possession chain. Reminds me of the very old, Pioneer Pied Piper of Hamelin trains is tapping stuff down and stopping it from recovering. Starts to consider it, but then decides, I think, no, tapping out here to do that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's really not necessarily a ton to be gained from it. Especially since we could use the Tsukihime ability to remove the abilities of something and then just kill it, using the spirit. It's really having to debate whether tapping out, recognizing you'll be only at 2 resources total. Only reason we're at 3 resources is because we still have stone or still have coin. And tapping out here means that very likely that he would be at only 2 resources next turn, and there's a very high likelihood at this point that I will hit the Tron stones to be able to have access to a lot more will. And I'll still have Jeweled Branch, which is great, especially since most of the deck is going to be at gears, so Jeweled Branch can pay for them. Ultimately does decide to just let the Valentina slip away and leave up the will. I think this is the better play overall. And then just going to pass the turn there. End of his going into my turn. The beginning of turn trigger would happen, but there's nothing there. We're going to go ahead and before recovery try to make our queen a treasury. Or no. Sorry, we're going to use the ability of the copied Tsukihime to make the chef a treasury and then remove all of its abilities for the turn. And then once again come through with Moon Dust Revolution. Technically needed to pay for this with the collector gears because the Jeweled Branch can only pay for gears and Moon Dust Revolution is not a gear. So that's a little bit of an error on my part. Apologies there, Robert. Keep that in mind when you're choosing how to pay for stuff. And then a Sex's return from retirement coming down here, probably to search for another gears treasury to get myself up to be able to be at 6 next turn. Robe of the Fire gears. Move to recovery, get to recover all but 1 stone, or only 1 stone. That point in time, we do have Tron online. We have all 3 unique stones, so we're probably just going to pass at the turn at that point. Oh no, choosing to use 2 to go ahead and play that Minions of Tsukihime, so now our gears cost 1 less, meaning that we only have to pay 1 for Robe of the Fire gears, which is great because we can use Jeweled Branch to then pay for Robe of the Fire gears and leave our stones recovered. So now we're sitting at 1, 2, 3, 4 5 treasury items. So next turn we'll be able to set up to be 6 treasury items just by using the Tsukihime and making something a treasury. So next turn's pretty much lethal unless there's a response. So we'll go ahead and just swing in for 11 here in the air. Take down to 29. And then pass the turn. So right now we're sitting at a very easy way to just, pop for lethal. It really comes down to just what Robert is going to throw at us, or if we want to be able to try to respond, push through something like a Pharaoh spell or something like that. We do see a recovery. Calling Stone. So again, 3 resources up. Paying 1, and we're hitting the first card off the top, which is the Falchion. Choosing whether or not we're going to see that card get cast. see what else is going to come down, or if we're going to commit to this Falchion. I don't super love the idea of playing the Falchion here because it does tap out. And the board presence right now from Robert's not particularly threatening. Can swing in and try to draw cards, but ultimately I'm probably just going to take the damage that's being swung in here. Does decide to commit to the Falchion. We'll look at those top 7 cards. Can put them back on the top of the deck in any order. Choosing how we're arranging things here. I think the best course of action would be to stack a 1-drop on top and then leave, the card you want underneath it, so that you guarantee that first spell stops, which is most likely a 1-drop, just gets canceled. The problem is, again, that we have this Spirit, which counts as a Treasury item. So we're just going to be able to do kind of the same thing we did last game, as long as we don't, kind of fumble, in which we're just going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 resonators that are all 20/20, or that all have +10/+10, and that's just got to be lethal at that point in time. Plus the flyer, who will be 19 in the air. So only one of these needs to swing, and Robert only has 4 blockers, so we've just got enough pressure on board to be able to do the lethal. Drawing for turn. Missing the trigger window there to make something a Treasury, so a little bit of an error on my part. Double checking exactly how Falchion reads. Said it's the first one. Then as it's whenever your opponent plays a spell, trigger, and then it's reveal. It's like a forced reveal. So if I play the thing that I want to play and resolve second, then I'm pretty sure I'm safe there. And you see I have Moondust Revolution in hand. So we're just going to quickly go into combat, make this as easy as possible, take him down to 18. And now it's time to bait out the Falchion reveal off the top. Floating 2 will. Gonna go ahead and do attack order, just targeting the chef. If we can't target Falchion, Falchion will trigger. We don't really care about this attack order resolving or not. So seeing what the top reveal is, didn't put a 1-drop on top. So maybe just didn't want me to see another Tsukihime, so put a 2-drop on top instead. So we get Genocider, but that's not what matters. What matters is the fact that we can just tap literally our whole set of stuff. We're going to use this to make Rabbits a Treasury, which we didn't need to do because it's already a Treasury, and then go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 for just 4,800 damage. Off of a Moondust Revolution and the 1 remaining floating that we have access to there. So just one-shotting for 4,800 with Robert being completely tapped out and having no way to prevent it. And so that will be the game. So thanks to Robert for being willing to let us showcase Tron Treasuries. Let us know what you think about it here. Deck profile, we'll try to get it up before we go to Worlds, but it might be later. So until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.